Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, let's talk about this thing here. This is my Ryobi oscillating belt spindle sander. I call it ROBSS. There's other brands out there. There's the Win, which I call it WOBS, and so on and so forth. I did a video where I explained all that. So I want to talk about dust collection on these machines, because they do produce a lot of fine dust. And you really do need to collect it when you're using this machine. The more you collect here, the less you're going to have to breathe later. So anyway, I took a good look at this machine, and the things I'm going to tell you about this machine are really going to be just about this style machine. If you have a ROBSS or one of the other brands, you're going to maybe have to evaluate yours, but hopefully you'll get some insight of what I'm seeing here to help you figure out how to maybe get yours to do a better section on it. So it's designed to run off of a 2.5-inch vacuum hose, shop vac. So the outlet is right here. And if you look down in here, and this is the one thing that's amazing about this machine, all the videos I've seen, I've never heard anybody explain to you about how the vacuum actually works. Basically, it has 2 vacuum chambers, not just one. Like most areas, you have just one hose going into one little plenum, and it all draws through that one section. This actually has 2 distinct different chambers. One chamber is that little area underneath your belt and spindle sander area. Underneath there is shaped like a bowl, so that the dust that falls down in there is collected through the bottom half of this shop vac hose area. The top half goes into a chamber right along the back side here. There's some slots in the top, and theoretically this top half then draws the vacuum through here, so any dust that's airborne will go down through here. That's the theory, but it does not work very well for that. One of the biggest problems I think is that at least on this machine, that bottom tray and this top lid, they don't come together to give you a sealed chamber. They're actually apart from each other, so you got that vacuum leak all the way around it. So this thing is really, in my opinion, at least on this machine, is virtually useless. And that's okay. So the challenge is, I want to still vacuum chamber 1, but I want to eliminate chamber 2. And if I do, I don't have to worry. As long as I collect all the dust still, I don't have to worry about this thing filling up with dust. But we should be able to clean this out once in a great while. And I'll show you all that when I go into how using the new system and how to keep the machine cleaner easier with the new system that I'm developing. So anyway, in a nutshell, we're going to still use vacuum chamber number 1, eliminate vacuum chamber number 2, and create our own above the top, on the top chamber. So I built this plenum here, and it takes an 1.25 inch hose fitting, and it's just going to go there, and it's going to clamp here. And I should be able to adjust this to wherever I want, and if instead of a belt, if I have a spindle in there, I can still get up to it pretty easily from any angle for me to get in here, and from this side here, I'll be able to work with that there. So now that means that I'm going to eliminate that chamber, and I'm going to run that half of the vacuum here to here. So how do I do that? How do I get to be attached to number 1 and eliminate number 2? What are we going to do? So I found a simple solution for that. I probably got 50 of these things if I looked around long and hard enough. This has been cut off, but this is that long nozzle that you get with almost any small vacuum cleaner that has a slat on the end. You put it on the hose and you use it with furniture and get down the little corners and cubby holes and that sort of thing, the folds of upholstery. Anyway, I cut it off, and I found, because of the thickness this way, it fits into that lower half and pushes, and at this length I'm now sticking into chamber number 1. This is sticking into there by about 1/4 inch or so. So that means that now I can attach my hose here, and that eliminates using it. This will be all open and not being in use. Now, if I have only this chamber, if I have all my vacuum going here, then this is the only place I'm collecting is underneath. And even though it does a fairly good job, and probably on when you use the spindles as opposed to the belt, that's probably true. Then you probably only use this, and you don't need really a top cover, I have found, when I'm doing spindle work, per se. But you can. But the point is, I wanted it to be flexible so I can either use only section on chamber 1, or I'm going to be able to use chamber 1 and chamber 3, because we eliminated chamber 2. And it's not going to hurt anything, because only dust that get in there may fall down in there. And we'll be able to vacuum that out pretty much just by holding the vacuum in the area and putting it in certain places to help draw the vacuum out of there. So anyway, I don't think I'm eliminating it. I would not want to eliminate chamber number 1 from doing this, because all that dust falling down in there, if you don't have it going out, man, that's going to build up in a hurry, and you can create a mess, I suspect, pretty easily. Most of the people, excuse me, my throat gets dry. Especially when I talk a lot. Anyway, that chamber number 1 will clog up on you. Everybody I've seen that made a chamber, they make this chamber number 3 and eliminate the rest of it. That's what I've seen pretty much. And that's not a good way of doing it. I still want to use chamber number 1, eliminate chamber number 2, and use chamber number 3, maybe. And that's when it will be optional whether I'm using it or not. So, how do we want our system to work? So I've put together a prototype, very simple and rudimentary, that will allow me to do all these things. And but it should get you to thinking. If you have one of these machines, you can probably do exactly what I'm going to be doing here. If you have a different style machine, you have to look at and evaluate that. If I had one of those machines, I could look at it and tell you probably pretty quickly how it compares and what you would want to do to that compared to one of these. So, but that's neither here or there, since I've never even seen one of those in person. So, let's set this up. Let me show you my design. Basically, I made a plenum with 2 hoses. This hose goes to chamber number 3, and this hose goes to chamber number 1 using this adapter. So if I put my adapter in and I hook my hose up to chamber number 1, then I can take my plenum that I've made, and I actually drilled a couple holes. This is the bottom plate. I made it a little longer so I could attach it. Now eventually I'll probably just attach it on here once I do a final version, but I wasn't ready to commit to attaching something to here quite yet. So temporarily, all I do is this hole fits onto that stud that's sticking up. That's a 3/8 stud. So that just sits down on the stud. And to hold it down, I had this. This has actually got double use, because not only will this, now I put a T-nut and epoxied it on the bottom, so I can actually screw that down onto that stud. And you don't want to make it tight, but now it's not going to fall off anyway. Then this hose hooks up to there, and now this hose hooks up to here. And it can just slide in and out. I don't need it to stay in there permanent, because this hose, there's a couple different things you can do with it. I can actually eliminate this upper hood, especially if I'm using a spindle. And then I can take this, which I said is 1.25 inches, and I push it down over that dowel, which is 1 1/8 dowel, and push it down all the way. Now with the vacuum hooked up and I start second vacuum, instead of 50% of the vacuum pressure here and 50% here into chamber 1, I now have about 95% going into chamber 1, and I'm losing about 5% out of the end of that hose for this hose. So I can now use only this chamber number 1, for my vacuum collection if I'm using a spindle or something. And there are times when I actually find that that does actually work a little bit better. So, this is a good start. Also, I found that by not being permanently attached to the upper chamber, to chamber number 3, I can actually use this, fire up the vacuum cleaner, and do a little quick cleanup. Maybe pull this off and make sure everything is cleaned up. Use it to clean up chamber number 2 and all the area. And I should be able to clean up all the way around the vacuum cleaner real quick and easy. And then when I'm done, I can either put it there or put it back on chamber number 3. So this is a pretty fair setup. It's a good idea to start. Now I would like to change this out and maybe go to have this thing attached here. And when I come out, come into this chamber. In fact, I think I'm going to do away with this plenum altogether. It's pretty large, and I don't think I need that. I think maybe what I'm going to do is just go to a simple 1.25 inch 3-way a T adapter, for 1.25 inch PVC. Then I'll attach this hose to one outlet, attach this hose to the other outlet, and then my vacuum hose will hook to the third. And I'll have the same thing. This one will all be straight pipe that doesn't move. The second one will still have a hose on it, but I can get rid of this bulky box and just use one of those 1.25 T fittings. I'm not doing very well this morning. Anyway, so that's kind of how the whole thing works in a nutshell. So now all I have left is to take my hose, and I'm going to turn this around. I've got it plugged in. Let's go ahead and turn this around, maybe. I know. I should have this set up somewhere where we can really have it. And I'm just going to plug the hose, vacuum hose, directly in. Now I'm going to take this, and let's just set it up. Oh, right there will work. And this hose just goes right in there. So now, when I turn on the vacuum and turn on the machine, I should be able to sand and pretty much have a clean tabletop when I'm done. You can't really see it, but it's going to dust up into here. If I take this one off, plug it off, now you can see there's a lot of dust built up right here. So this thing is doing a very good job of crushing the dust like right here without any problem with the simple hose. Also, what I like about it is that when I'm ready for cleanup, I can either leave that there or I can take it out of the way. Wrong switch. And now I can go through here and do a quick cleanup of the whole tabletop. And it's all clean. So I like the design setup, the prototype of this. I don't like the plenum, so I do want to trim that down and make it smaller. And the smaller that chamber is, that plenum on the back where the both hoses come in, the smaller that chamber is, the better the vacuum will be at both chamber both vacuum chambers that I'd be using. Or if I'm only using one, the vacuum from that would be very efficient by plugging off hose number 2. So anyway, I think this is going to work real well. And so far, I've been very happy with it, with the amount of time I've used it. And I'm glad I had this opportunity to use it for a while before I showed it to you. But I am going to make improvements. And again, you can make something look really pretty and nice if you want to work it that way. Right now, I'm just trying to make sure how functional it is. And I honestly believe this can be a lot more efficient on how it works and how I can lock it down and all that sort of thing. But I'm going to have to use it for a while to decide. Also, I wanted to mention that if you put it all the way around here like so, one of the things I do a lot when I use this is I still use the belt sander mostly. And if I need any kind of curvature or dowel, any spindle sanding work, I use this thing a lot, just like a drum sander. Because if you take everything out of the way completely, I can get here on the end and use this 3-inch diameter spindle to do some nice sanding on it. If I put a smaller sandal in there, like I said, I can put a smaller one on here, but with this, I don't really find I have to a lot of times. And now, just so you know, this end of the belt is the tracking pulley. This is the drive pulley. It's a bigger wheel, and it's sturdy, and it's locked down because of this shaft. But this one actually is on spring loaded because it's supposed to be able to tip using this one, and that adjusts your tracking. So if I use this smaller one here, which is like 1.5 inches in diameter, can I use that? Yeah, I can, and I have been known to. But I will tell you now that you can't push hard on it. You got to go really gentle, because if you start pushing hard, it'll throw your tracking belt, and it'll go one way or the other like crazy and go off tracking. So you have to be careful. You can use it, but a lot of times I don't use my drum sanders because this wheel right here is really very handy for that sort of thing. And I found that even though it's a little larger at 3-inch, in some ways that's actually a much better surface for sanding things that are on a curve than using a small diameter one. You get less of those little ripples that you would get as it digs in at different places on a long arc. And on here you get a much cleaner flow through that arc because you're using a bigger diameter radius on bigger radius sanding surface. So anyway, this is a tip. This is very handy to use too. So I like to be able to get around here on the end and work with that. And that's one thing I like about that is I can set that all the way back here and it'll still very effectively pick up, but give me full access to this area right here. So anyway, that's the whole dust thing in a nutshell. It seems to work pretty good. I really like the extra feature of being able to grab the hose and clean up as I go along from time to time. And it does pretty much pick up, I'd say 99% of the dust out of the air. So you get a very clean shop area when you get done using it if you use your shop vac in conjunction with it. Much better setup. Anyway, yeah, I appreciate you coming by, looking at this, and seeing how I did it. I quite frankly, I am very surprised that nobody has ever discussed this 2-chamber thing ever before. I didn't realize it had it that way because I've never looked at it that closely on dust collection. But I do know that when I was going to take the vacuum away from the back and just put it on this hoodie, I did take a look at it because I knew dust collection was going on under here. And I also know that if you eliminate collecting that dust, you're opening up for another bit of problem. So you have to actually split that vacuum and keep that vacuum going to underneath here to chamber 1. Very important. And then just figure out some kind of top one. So you do have to split it off, and that's the tricky part I found on this. So anyway, if you have one of these machines, you do it this way, I can tell you now you'll be very, very happy with the results, both short-term and long-term, on dust collection on this machine. So Anyway, thanks for coming by. Any comments, any questions, any thoughts about any of this? Just leave it in the comments. I do read them all and I appreciate it. If you learned something here you like, or you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know that I'm doing something right. So, most importantly though, please come back again because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.